Sup everybody, this is Karak with ACG, and it's my continuing first-person mission to bring you reviews that aren't 2 minutes long or filled with sponsored bullcrap. And today I'm stoked to be bringing you the review for Call of Duty Infinite Warfare for the PS4, PC, and Xbox One. Infinite Warfare tells a tale of Nick Riaz, a pilot in the SCAR, or Special Combat Air Recon, on a future planet Earth, who, after almost dying in a surprise attack, basically goes straight up Captain Kirk mode, from pilot to captain in like 30 minutes, because somehow accidents only seem to kill ranking officers. That of course leaves you embarking on a series of choosable missions to take down the enemy that has done so much harm, from space to land to underground. Of course, all this is packed into the title, as well as the tried and true Call of Duty multiplayer testing the Ritalin levels of men and women everywhere, as well as that old favorite, Zombies mode. This time with more killer clowns. Let's see how it did, shall we? As always, if you like the review, maybe subscribe. So here is my review for Call of Duty Infinite Warfare. Here, the captain opens every door. Virtual reality in a virtual world virtually, and Battlestar Galacta duty. Graphics are up first. You know what? It's nice to be surprised sometimes. Whether it's moving into completely unexpected territory by fast-seating it through a planet's heated atmosphere and then for some reason leaping out of that perfectly good space plane into an angry ant's nest of enemies, or taking out legions of enemy space fighters with the world's best locked-on guns, or hell, just putting boot to ass in close-range lead wars. Call of Duty may not win any awards this year for the best-looking game ever, but it actually looks pretty goddamn tremendous with all manner of wartime explosive effects going off at any one time. But it's the unique locations and fiction that absolutely elevate this Call of Duty above many others. What's so fascinating here is despite fighting it out on Mars or stabbing enemy robots, lithium hearts, and backstreet brawls, it all still feels and somewhat looks like Call of Duty, but it feels like Call of Duty next. Explosions, destruction, and battle effects are all absolutely stellar, with an attention to detail that usually doesn't get into the way of the desired 60 frames per second on the consoles. But I would be lying if I said that either console version was stable at 60. In fact, we do see some disappointing drops at various times into the low 50s when a ton of enemies get on screen, and for some reason I'll decide that even in close quarters and despite the guns they carry, grenades are probably the best bet. And all that smoke and debris from all those explosions can actually turn a little bit detrimental. Now, animations in the characters' weapons and all the tertiary items are actually well done, but sort of as with any game, it seems like sometimes NPCs have their faces vacuumed of detail, and here it's even some that you deal with on a regular basis. It's almost like a torture for people who aren't pretty enough, and if you're not, someone takes a damn Dyson vacuum to your skull. Now, texture work is pretty good throughout, though there are a couple that look decidedly low detail, and they pop up from time to time, but really Call of Duty's level design nullifies a good deal of that anyway. The forced lack of exploration in most of these levels allows them to give a particular presentation, and they do that throughout. Now, on the console side, you have a couple options, but on the PC side, the options for graphics are pretty acceptable, with most of what you would expect, including an FOV scale from 80 to 120 and anti-aliasing that sticks to FXAA and variants of SMAA. While it appears to at least adequately be optimized, it's going to take some time, of course, for all the beta testers, known as consumers, to field their many different configurations and see how it all works out. I've actually been pretty happy, though, with a GTX 1080 and an i7 5820. I'm getting an average of over 100 FPS at almost all times at 1440p with all the settings at their highest. I do get a couple drops here and there. Graphically, where Infinite really succeeds, though, is in the smartness of its design and its artistic choice and how it reflects the future, all sort of coupled with the expectations I think a lot of people have of a Call of Duty title. Here is this mixture of the past Call of Duty games thrust into the future with a workmanship design. Nothing feels too slick, and most weapons have this underlying design that suggests they're more contemporary cousins today. It may not eclipse other titles in the genre, like let's say Battlefield, in pure image quality, but it almost gleefully desires to straight blow shit up at all times, and it's almost unwavering support for throwing the main character across the game world, down flights of stairs, and across streets like a goddamn ragdoll. It just gives everything a very incredibly dynamic feel to it. I really like that, and it's typical Call of Duty. As a package, I'd say it's good, but held down in a couple places. Sound, music, and voice.
Orson, let's go! Staff Sergeant, cover the exit. Ethan? Yes, sir!
Godspeed, Captains. Top Cat out.
We've got no air wing.
We'll go without it. That's how we do things in the infantry, Lieutenant.
We'll insert the Marines from Retribution.
I'll provide overwatch from Tigris. Let's go to work, Captain Reyes. Stay sharp out there, all of you.
And of course, sound is up first. Now, while they have very few options for sound setup with just default small speakers and headphones, which is really disappointing, they do offer the typical sliders for adjustments to get that leveling right. And once you do, I have to say, almost everything is really good here with a high degree of attention aimed at environmental effects, which is vital in a title like this. Now, most weapons have a good amount of pop to them, but I did find that there were a couple that didn't seem to have any thickness and variation, at least as much as I expected. Of course, then there's also the question, what would a laser gun sound like? Because they're in this game, and each developer seems to try to figure it out on their own, and no one ever really hits it, which is basically what it would sound like is flesh cooking, like bacon. Instead, you get sort of the generic overall laser gun sound you expect, but not much really that's interesting there. Now, that being said, explosions, debris cracking, and falling apart around you as you realize you've just lodged up in the world's most rickety fucking building are all actually done really, really well. I love that sound sphere. Also, space battles. Now, I get it, there's no sound in space, but guess what? If there was sound in space, this is how cool it would be. The first time a ship jumps into warp next to you, it sounds like the beginning of a Slash guitar solo timed with a damned bass drop. It is tremendous, almost earth-shattering, and absolutely makes you believe that travel like this is probably about as dangerous as they pretend it is. I'd say pretty good, but a couple issues here as well. And that, of course, brings us to music. Now, Sarah Schachner from past titles like Assassin's Creed Unity as well as Black Flag handles the main composer duties here, and I have to say, I'm actually intrigued by this soundtrack more so than prior titles. Now listen, we all know that there's going to have those hero horns in the typical deep string section so that everyone knows that this one particular moment is supposed to be fucking awesome, so you need to pay attention. But there is a lot of under-the-covers experimentation here that you can pick out, and a couple moody sections that remind you that she's done some work on a horror film, for example, including the movie The Remains. And the little ways in which that comes out here aren't instantly noticeable, but felt in moments where maybe you're facing sheer death as your spaceship disintegrates around you, or that melancholy moment when the main character realizes that screwed isn't even in the same dictionary as the word he needs to find for his current predicament. It's excellent stuff, and while still wildly orchestra sounding, there's some experimentation in the timing and rhythm that are really outstanding, and there are ways that you can show that a game can feel unique, but still within the same overall tone as previous titles. Really enjoyable music. Voice. Yeah, so have you ever watched one of those YouTube videos where they say someone's gonna fall or there's gonna be a crash and you just wait there cringing? Well, that's pretty much what I did throughout this entire game, because I always expected something to be cringeworthy or it to fail, and it didn't. From the subtle but still absolutely likable main character Reyes, played with a lot more humanity than most other Call of Duty mains by Brian Bloom, to the very, at first, almost tropish but still strangely oddly timed Admiral Koch, who's voice acted by Kit Harington. Hell, even Claudia Black shows up, or a doppelganger of Claudia Black. And if that's true, I hope that machine that makes doppelgangers of Claudia Black is somewhere near me. Also, everyone is environmentally sound and without any of the typical overacting that I think we would all expect. Also, absolute kudos to the voice actor and the writing of the robotic character Ethan, who at first appears to be this blunt instrument that's going to teach everyone what humanity is through this basic slave AI in a robot suit, and then sort of turns around and delivers some actual laugh-out-loud one-liners. I was actually really surprised by that character. Very good voice. Gameplay. So a little bit about story. Now, years into the future, mankind pretty much said, screw countries, because if we destroy the Earth, it's not going to matter if we're buried in Nebraska or Calcutta, we're still all going to be dead. So they joined together, exploring the solar system and nearby planets and setting them up for mining the material mankind needs to keep expanding. But as any sci-fi movie will show you, the moment you build anything near Mars, everyone's screwed. Has anything ever worked out in any fiction if someone builds an outpost on Mars? Ever. After building settlements on some planets, including Mars and asteroids, differing groups begin to quarrel, and up in the end, you end up having the UNSA on one side and the Settlement Defense Front on the other. And that's pretty much where you begin. Single player first. So this has really been an interesting couple weeks when you think about it. Where Titanfall found excellence in the addition of a short but enjoyable campaign to offset its multiplayer core, Call of Duty games have always cherished the single player, but that doesn't mean they were actually always good. Here is a story that has you trekking across a solar system, leading the UNSA through a series of battles after the wicked attack by the SD on Earth. You control things from the bridge of a spaceship and jump into a minimap, not at all unlike Mass Effect 1, where you choose story missions, secondary missions, and tertiary missions as they unlock. It's all very slick, and because Call of Duty's never shied away from presentation, the fact that 1 second you're fighting alongside some friends on some foreign planet only to jump into a spaceship and seamlessly go into near space orbit to fight off an interceptor group, then you land on the ship, on the dock manually, only to quickly leap off into another mission, really sets the feeling for basically being a Viper on the Battlestar Galactica. As you play it, you almost notice right away that there's this elegant elasticity to the gameplay that really astounds me from a Call of Duty standpoint. Various weapons that do different kinds of damage to various different enemies all need to be employed. You're going to end up slipping through a door, hacking the view of an enemy robot, and then going full demonic Johnny 5 on them when you short circuit and blow yourself up. You'll be leaping into space fighters and dodging enemy missiles as you blow up the world's worst defended and designed generators of all time, all in one single mission. And the missions are never just what they seem either. For example, on most of the mission locations, hidden away are some secret armories, and these armories can basically be found and they unlock special new weapons, sort of like you're hacking their special defense archives, making it feel like you're not only taking the fight to the enemy, but you're actually seeing the inner workings as well. It's really weird because like Black Ops 3, the missions can be done out of order, of course, but here it all makes sense. It's an organic leadership role that's extended to the missions that you perform, with almost none of them feeling like filler, because sometimes suddenly enemies will get reinforcements on a planet, or bad guys will hack your comms to warn you that death isn't even better than what is actually coming to you. Without any shadow of a doubt, I enjoyed Call of Duty Infinite's campaign more so than any campaign since Modern Warfare 2, and it is also incredibly long. Of course, as you guys know, I test the AI in every game through all the difficulty levels to make sure it works for those brand new to the overtop bravado simulator known as Call of Duty, all the way to fans who remember the first time someone dropped the name soap. Here we have a pretty good spread as well. We also have an unlockable specialist mode that increases the difficulty of the game. For example, if you get shot in the leg, your character will move slower, or shot in the arm, you'll have trouble aiming. The requirements on you are dramatically increased, and then if you beat that, there's a you only live once mode, which pretty much sounds exactly like it is. Now, that doesn't mean everything's perfect, because it's not. AI was good, but it did have one or two issues. Still better than past titles. With the running and gunning and the strategy used in the normal battle, as well as flying around in your spaceships and other ways in which you explore the game, I have to say, really good campaign. And now on to multiplayer. So listen, aside from the locations and a couple other things, this is Call of Duty multiplayer, which means all the wall run and door sliding and supply drop antics of any past title. Spread across 12 levels in this main game, many of them not Earth-based. You're going to find the typical game modes, and honestly, a lot of them, because there's over 15. How that feeds into particular modes' longevity is going to be very interesting, but as a whole, I found that TTK seemed dialed in about right. As you level up, you of course unlock the requisite arcane library of items within the game's arsenal. And if there's one thing that Call of Duty always seems to do right, it's the number of items you can collect, from various banners to weapon skins, of course, to special attachments. Now, jumping in is as easy as picking a class, and that's called a rig in this game. Rigs can be named like Warfighter, Synaptic, Striker, and Phantom. They all have corresponding, somewhat roughly, various other classes in other games, and some of them will unlock as you move on. You also join teams right away, which is basically starting out with the Wolverines from the campaign. These teams are sort of, you could just consider them like backers, and they drop little mini missions that help you advance, and you unlock them as you go. Like, those mini missions could be kill 5 enemies with a laser rifle or assorted other small trials. So let's cut to the chase here, though. There's no surprises here when it comes to modes and maps. I love the maps I played, and connecting and playing was easy and worked well, but there is no surprises. However, there's a massive issue. Windows 10 Store versus Steam versions of the game cannot work. That means it's very important. So the three of you out there who are going to buy the Windows 10 Store version of this, don't, because you won't be able to actually play against people on Steam. Also, a few of the special variants are actually locked behind purchasable supply drops, which sucks, but for the most part, nothing else is. But it is the typical microtransactions you can expect in any Call of Duty game. As always, multiplayer, especially prior to release, is up in the air, so I will update this review if it goes bad or if there's any other problems. Now, while the game has all manner of bot battles and local multiplayer and split screen and various ways in which to engage, it also has zombie mode. Now, for a lot of people, this is their favorite. This time, the separate story involves some demonic summoning movie director getting 4 people to star in his movie that turns out to be real and, of course, stars zombies, and a soundtrack DJ'd by the drunk hamburglar himself, known as David Hasselhoff, and no, I'm not lying. Now, the entire premise is the lovely what the hell that Zombies has always had, and yet there's been some improvements here with a more subtle difficulty spike and some tongue-in-cheek aspects to dying that I think make it a little less brutal. It's sort of one part Rob Zombie's love for old stage horror but actually good, and one part Blood Dragon presentation mixed with a little bit of Killer Clowns from Outer Space. Lastly, nothing would succeed without excellent control, and regardless of the version, Infinite is actually no slouch there. It still has excellent control. Fun factor. You know, this is really the culmination of years of attempts by these guys fiddling around in the back seats of cars trying to nail something down that was sort of undescribed in the campaign, but they always wanted to see happen. Now we finally get that game, and these guys have wanted this title since maybe Modern Warfare 2 to have a campaign like this, and it does. And because it's kept to the high requirements these guys have, that means little things like the ships slowly being repaired around you as you do more and more missions and the attitude of soldiers around you changing. it makes you feel there. Like a pissed off but younger Adama, you control a spaceship and that's your home. These are your people, and well, not some damned RPG. Sitting back with them watching a news feed after a successful mission and hearing them talk about it is absolutely excellent fiction building. So as you guys know, I rate games on a buy, wait for a sale, rent, or never touch it again rating scale. This is a buy, but it's sort of an odd buy because it's one of those games where I honestly have to say this is just such an enjoyable campaign compared to the prior titles. And I thought that they had some good campaigns depending on which one. But the multiplayer is just very unsurprising to me, and it really didn't do anything to grab me like last multiplayers, the last couple actually have. This one didn't do much at all, so it's actually sort of switching. And so I think people who just get this for the multiplayer don't expect anything that's really soul-shatteringly different. There's a little bit that is, a couple things you can do, but it's nothing that makes you go, oh wow, this is completely different. Of course, most people wouldn't want that in their multiplayer anyway. So anyway, that's it for me. I hope you guys liked the video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Maybe check out Twitter and Patreon. It always helps. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down. And remember, if you want reviews that aren't 2 minutes long and filled with sponsored bullshit, stick with ACG. Peace out and enjoy the rest of your week.